going to go into our panel discussion for the topic 4, so identity, mobility, ecosystems, balancing compliance with user experience. Now, businesses involved in the letting of cars, scooters, and other vehicles need to be sure not only that they're complying with local regulations, but they also need to verify the identities of their customers before they hand over the keys and pick up the new passenger. So for this conversation around the identity and mobility ecosystems, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Sebastian Philipp, Head of Mobility at Futurize, Harold Grazer, Regional Sales Director for the DACH region Jumio, and Nitin Maslaka, Head of Product and Tech, Mars Mobility. Please put your hands together for our 3 speakers.
Thank you very much. First of all, welcome and thank you to Autonomy for the opportunity to talk a little bit about online identity and online identity verification. I'm very pleased and happy, and thank you again, Nitin Maslaka from Mars Mobility to join, and Sebastian Philipp from Futurize. I would like to give you the opportunity, Nitin, introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about Miles.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, and good afternoon to all. So I'm Nitin, I head the product and tech at Miles, so basically responsible for all the digital elements required for any car sharing company to be operational. And obviously, probably people who live in Berlin probably are aware of Miles. It's the biggest independent car sharing, free float car sharing provider based out headquartered in Berlin, operating in 8 different cities right now as of today. So yeah, that's what Miles does, playing a bit of a role in the future mobility.
Thank you. Thank you also for the invitation. My name is Sebastian Philipp. I'm the new head of the mobility for Futurize. Who's Futurize? Futurize is actually a global innovation and design consultancy based originally in Finland, coming from Helsinki. Meanwhile, acting throughout several studios in Europe, and we're supporting different various size of clients in all aspects about the digital transformation, from building services, validating business models, over to helping them with their organizational structures and also software development in general.
Thank you both. Maybe a couple of words about Jumio for the ones who don't know us. Jumio is a provider of an online identity verification platform, right? So identification can be a government issued ID, it can be a resident permit, a passport, a driver's license, but it could also be an email or a phone verification, a proof of residence. And what we saw in the last couple of years, especially when the pandemic started, it was actually a push for Jumio, because people started to do their business online, right? They didn't want to go to a bank and open an account directly at the counter. They wanted to do it from home. And the mobility, of course, is one of our most important industries where Jumio is at home. And maybe Nitin, over the last 2.5 years, how did COVID affect the business of Miles? Was it dropping, or maybe some thoughts around that is that people were afraid and avoided maybe public transportations and more wanted to sit in their own car, in their own safe environment? Maybe you can do a bit on the business in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years has been challenging, right, for each and every industry, including mobility. Mobility in specific as well, because people were no longer going out of homes, their homes, at least in the initial part of the COVID times. So, but then slowly and surely people started to get out. Not 100% of the use cases were there. So it did impact the business quite a bit, but that also, like any calamity or any problem, is an opportunity to excel, opportunity to grow. So from Minds itself, it was the same, that we looked at this as an opportunity to kind of develop more business models which can help kind of put car sharing in forefront in urban scenarios, so people can think of car sharing as an option for different use cases they have for their day-to-day requirement, where they would think of buying a car itself. Obviously, in the very beginning of it, we did see that people were not using public transportation as much because of the obvious scare they had. So we did see a bit of an increase there of car sharing usage, not just miles, it was across the industry. That's what we had seen the trend itself. So that obviously helped us to sustain through that period, but that also, as I said, it also laid out a platform to really explore more business models for us and kind of improve on it so that at some point we can really start challenging the ownership of cars in an urban scenario, at least to begin with, and then slowly penetrate into low tier 2 and rural scenarios as well.
Great, thank you. And a question for you, Sebastian, because Futurist is supporting and partnering with established companies like Mars Mobility, but startups as well in the mobility space. What would you say are the biggest challenges to develop concepts like this, and what might companies not think about starting a business in the mobility space?
Biggest challenge, I would say, often people approach us with an idea, with a concept in mind, and it's still we are still surprised how often they created an idea and concept by their own and didn't involve actually users in their idea creation process it really validated their actually idea or business model. Often they start with software development still in the traditional way, and even haven't thought of testing these concepts. Didn't validate these aspects truly with for example, enabling real purchases, even in a test phase. And so this is something that still surprises me, and yeah, but that's also my role to advocate and enable people and clients with this.
Thank you, Sebastian. Coming back to online identity, right? It's a very important thing because you want to make sure that the person who drives a car or an e-scooter or a transporter is exactly the person who presented maybe an ID, and the person must be live, right? Must not be a video or something else like this. Maybe can you tell, how did you do the onboarding before you used Jumio, and what changed, and what gave you the idea to develop a concept for a fully automated onboarding process?
Yeah, and from the very beginning of Miles, the onboarding has been digital in a sense. Obviously, we had to improve because at the end of the day, it's an asset. We are an asset-heavy business, so there's quite an expensive asset. We are going to basically hand it off to a complete stranger whom we had never met, right? So it's like, if you look at our fleet, you have right from Polos to Teslas, which is quite an expensive car to be on to driving. So we had to trust someone with such an expensive asset. So the only way we could trust someone is to kind of really verify and authenticate that the user who is going to use this car or get into this car is an absolutely validated user. So this was the biggest challenge that we had. So we reiterated quite a few things, and then once we started doing our own tech, we evaluated a lot of services and finally came up with Jumio as the best solution, which kind of felt like the right way to go because obviously of your experiences from the banking sector, which is probably more critical than from a financial perspective than a mobility industry. So that basically gave us confidence to go into that specific direction. And then basically with the flow of that's basically our onboarding flow, right? If anyone signs up for Miles, during the sign-up process, we validate that this person is a real person because that's where the liveness check of Jumio comes into picture. We validate the driving license, which is the critical element to drive our cars, and then obviously we also, not just driving license, but we also want to ensure that that person has a legal existence in the country that he or she is living. So that those multiple identity checks along with the algorithm, and it's a combination of what Jumio does, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a it's an AI-based system, but there's also a human factor behind it as well, where when the technology fails, there's a human verification of the systems that are, or the documents that happen as well, and that kind of gives us the confidence also to accept the users onto our platform with much more confidence to give access to our cars.
Yeah, just to comment a bit on this, and thank you, Nitin. Jumio tries to do the onboarding process as frictionless as possible, right? Because when we are in a big city like Berlin, you see e-scooters from different vendors from different suppliers. And I'm based in Munich, same there. So I choose the supplier who gives me the best user experience when onboarding or unlocking the e-scooter or the car or whatsoever. And this is basically what you do with Jumio is you take a picture of your driver's license, you take a selfie which is combined with a liveness check so that the person is really living and breathing. You do a biometric profile of it. Our AI in the background checks is the ID a real ID, the driver's license or the passport, or is it a fake, is it a copy, or whatsoever, is it broken, and checks is the person on the liveness, on the selfie, the same person than in the passport. And then we give the customer a decision, right? And meanwhile, we are having a risk score. The final decision is still with the customer at the end. We just provide the results from our side. And it's basically, it's 2 or 3 clicks and the verification and the onboarding process is done, which helps customers in the mobility space who live from conversion, right? The more e-scooters, the more cars you get moving, the more money you earn. And Jumio just gives a frictionless user experience, which is now as very important, with the maximum security you have to have. Just to iterate a bit on that. Sebastian, looking, I don't know, in the future, how do you see the mobility space? Because in the last couple of years we had a peak, we had a lot of different suppliers. But what would you say the next couple of years, the next decade would look like in general in the shared economy, in the shared mobility space?
In the shared mobility space, what just my personal impression is that we at least here in Berlin we have like these days kind of still in a Wild West scenario where we have it was already mentioned throughout the conference where still all suppliers and service providers have the possibility to have like here kind of a sandbox environment. And I'm definitely, yes, or not favor, but I like this idea of this Jelly thing that was presented this morning that gives some power back to the city to consolidate this market. Although we might have still some service providers that actually provide the service, I think we might also see the role, the much more active role of the municipalities in this game, to take also to as they take their also responsibility in offering kind of a mobility infrastructure to their inhabitants. Kind of.
From your perspective as well, Nitin, because you're directly in the business day to day, how do you see the mobility space in the next couple of years?
I mean, the space is still evolving, right? I mean, like, it's shared mobility has been there for quite some time right now, quite some years to be honest. It's still evolving, obviously. Over the last 10 years, we always have heard about this word, private-public partnerships, over and over again, probably in all the conferences, probably there's an overload of this word. But I think it's not there yet, where municipalities also treat this as a part of the ecosystem, which kind of is trying to solve a problem in an urban scenario. So it's not there yet. So probably it still requires a lot of work to be done. Completely agree with. Berlin is kind of a sandbox environment because the way the city itself is structured, right? Like if you look at many different cities, there's always like an inflow and outflow of people coming into the city and going out of the city, but Berlin doesn't happen because Berlin is kind of spread out. Each district is a city by itself. That gives a perfect platform to play around with that, and also ELB is kind of a good platform or good interface towards the government, right? So it's to the municipality itself to really see how ELB or B4K itself kind of tries to involve into the new mobility options. Especially with ELB, because they also see the benefits that they can bring to the customers, the end consumer, because at the end of the day, it's really about the end consumer, right? Because be it miles, be it any scooter sharing or be it public transportation, the fundamental purpose of us existing is to get people from A to B in the most convenient and reliable fashion. Different use cases have different reliability options, and that's where everyone would exist in that ecosystem. You can't, like just what was mentioned by the policy manager at Port, right? So based on the kilometer, different modes of transport would start pitching into the system. Whether it's a 2 kilometer, whether it's a 3 kilometer, whether it's a 5 kilometer, whether it's a 10 kilometer. All these elements need to coexist together. How well do these work together is what would really, I think that's the biggest challenge that exists, how well all these things work together in an urban environment and how well they are kind of incorporated into the urban space itself. I guess that's the challenge to be solved, and obviously it requires a lot of support from the government as well. So the government should see us as a part of the system and not a competitor or a challenger.
Great, thank you. Great, yeah. You said it, Nitin, you're dealing with expensive goods like Tesla, cars, transporters. How do you see fraud in that space at the onboarding? Is it a big issue for you guys, or if you could just give us, as much as you can, some insights, what do you do to prevent fraud and account takeovers?
Absolutely right. I mean, like fraudsters try to get into the platform. It's a huge issue for us. I mean, we have a whole team dealing with such kinds of users. Obviously, one of the first filtering that we do is with Jumio, right? So we look at the identity and see if there is already, if Jumio already tells that this is already a fraudster because of our previous experience, or if it's a fake document, etc. That's one thing that we already look at if this user has tried to use the same phone number during the sign-up process. So there are a lot of internal processes that we have built in as sales automations to really minimize as much fraudulent practices that could be possible. Still not 100%. I guess technology has still some flaws, but then if something happens, then obviously we have a human interaction or human intervention coming into the picture, and then trying to figure out the edge cases that would exist. I mean, like fraudsters, they're always probably one step ahead of what we think of, so it's always we getting better of them. It's always a cat and mouse game for us.
Right. Generally, Sebastian, if you could add something to the discussion, just important things you want to tell us around the mobility space, about concepts, how to develop them, just from your perspective, some interesting insights maybe from your side in general.
What I observed throughout the years is, especially in the service creation process, either clients or teams, they focus a lot on this core value of the product, which is also super crucial that you have this. You first have to think about this, what you want to deliver to the person. And when we thought of talking, having this panel, I thought of, about identification, what were situations that came across me throughout that time. And what I experienced quite some time is that especially these onboarding flows and especially these identification flows, they don't often get these importance. Also the time within the project in order to really design them so that we have kind of a frictionless experience. Often we have kind of a really nice designed product in itself, but to get the user throughout the onboarding flows, within also including digital identification, this is sometimes still of the challenge because of the lack of importance at first glance, I would say. So I really like that you took some time to select a real partner, because what I've also observed is that some try it on their own to build identity kits on their own, have to maintain them, have to operate them, which is quite a challenge. Yeah.
Thank you, Sebastian. Yeah. To your point, we have customers in different industries. It can be gaming, can be banking, it can be mobility. They reach out to us, and you immediately get the sense they're talking to you. We have to do the online verification. It's not something positive at the first hand. Something they have to do, which is more negative. But if we go into the discussion, you want to make sure that the person has a driver's license, right? Because if the car crashes, then it starts who's responsible for that. So you have to make sure when someone opens a bank account, it's really that person. So sometimes it needs a lot of support and explanation, as you said, that's right. Maybe because lack of knowledge, or because it's a project, it's an implementation project, but it's necessary. Because the world is getting more and more online. We're talking about digital identity, we talk about European eID, so everything moves to digital. From an implementation perspective, Niti, maybe you could just walk us through how the implementation went with Jumio, the efforts behind it, etc.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, it was pretty seamless, I guess. I mean, before touching on the implementation process itself, right? So, just to a point what Sebastian was mentioning, obviously we want users to use us, right? But then obviously when we talk of identity or ID validation, we also see that many people drop out of the registration process exactly at that point of time because they are kind of scared to really give out their IDs to any entity, be it mobility provider, or we see that as well. So that's kind of is a challenge that's still there, that we are still trying to address. Like, what's the best way to really onboard a user without really impacting the user experience? I mean, like, obviously we want to give them the confidence that, hey, this is what we are doing is for the right purpose. We trust most of them, but then we don't want to send the negative message that is said that, hey, it's not about the ID, but then yeah, hopefully we will reach a point, or maybe Sebastian at some point has a way to really change the way the user experience will be there towards how we can onboard the users there, make it as smooth as possible. But when it came to implementing Jumio, it was quite, I mean, I didn't see any difficulties there. I mean, it was quite a straightforward integration for us to really get, when I say I'm kind of really simplifying it, all the regular development challenges are still there, but it was nothing out of the world where there was no back and forth between the teams or anything. It was quite straightforward integration, which also kind of helps for at least teams like us, where obviously we didn't want to own this part of the piece of the software because it's a lot of work. It's an organization in itself, right? And Miles per se is not a software company; it's a mobility company, and we do our own software, we do our own technology, but not everything. We don't want to do everything, and so on that perspective, it was quite a smoother integration per se.
Interesting that you're saying this, because it's also an observation that I had about dropping out of the onboarding flow exactly when it's about giving their own data. When users are in the situation to give something from them, some personal information, and this is very. It's quite a pattern that's actually everywhere. Do you have ideas from you? Do you have your searched, or do you have explored this topic while developing or further developing the project or the product?
I mean, it's still an ongoing topic for us to really understand, at what point sometimes people are okay because we do a two-factor authentication in terms of documentation as well, right? So it's not just driving license, but we also ask for an ID. What people are not that hesitant got the driving license, but as soon as we ask for an ID, they are like kind of skeptical. But we don't like it, obviously, right? I mean, like we want as many conversions as possible, but still, that it's like safety first for us, so we want to do it. So, and if people, I mean, it's not that not every, I mean, like we still have a decent enough conversion rate, but then it's still a puzzle piece for us to really convince people, right? I mean, like these are the people who are potential users potential users of miles that's great, but it's also potential users for new mobility modes. They're potential shared mobility users, right? So that's in our interest. So not just miles, but it's also something contributing to a bigger picture into the whole ecosystem to really it's still a big challenge for us, right? So to really, how do we convince them? How do we say that like, hey, there's a better onboarding experience? Maybe everything at some point futuristic. Maybe everything is embedded into your eyes. So we just take a picture and we know everything about you. So hopefully that happens.
Yeah, I also don't have a clear answer for this. Sometimes I have the feeling it has also something to do with trust. In terms of giving data away from me, giving something away from me to someone I don't know, to a website, I don't know, but honestly, mostly it's laziness in this situation. Probably people maybe don't find documents in this situation. That's also something that we observed. They don't have their driver's license at hand at that moment. It's also sometimes about their VAT number when you have companies have to register for something. This is also something that we observed. But yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you. As you said, people need to rethink slightly because giving out your ID, it's very sensitive data, but when I checked in at the hotel yesterday in Berlin, I gave my ID card and they took a photocopy of it. So I had obviously not really a problem doing that, and most people would not have, but if they have to take a picture of the ID and it gets uploaded somewhere in the dark web, I understand it, but I think it's necessary that these things get online, will be online. Not only mobility, we see it in the banking, Jumio for example, the neobanks which don't have any branches, they're just online and they're very successful, and the onboarding and the conversion rates are high because they provide and offer a frictionless onboarding process.
Do you see there a difference in between different countries in the willingness to participate in these identification processes? Do you have experience?
I mean, when we look at banking again, Germany, from a technological perspective, Germany was never ahead, and we are still not. So if you want to open a bank account, you need to have a live person, agent, who takes a picture of the ID. So fully automated is not permitted yet. What we see is that, and Jumio is a global company, right? So we were founded in Austria, but we moved our headquarters to the US for obvious international reasons. And in the US, no one has any problem to upload any document to any cloud. So we see that the adoption in the US is higher than maybe in Europe. What we see is in the Nordic countries, technology is key and is everything. It is more literally in the region I'm operating, Germany, Austria, Switzerland. It's a bit slower, but we will get there, and we see a big increase of verifications there as well. So just to give you a number, Jumio is doing like 1.5 million verifications per day, and we see which countries are ahead, and it is the US, and it is South America, fund-wise, and
just not, if I don't talk of miles, I would understand that from a digital perspective, right? Currently, miles just operates in Germany, so can't really comment probably. So maybe we can comment on it as well into the future. What happens there?
Basically, these were the direct topics we wanted to talk about. I don't know if any of you to have a final statement, feel free, and if not, then yeah, we can open up for questions if there are any. We're happy to answer them.
Not, I mean, from a final statement, from it's when we really talk of identity or verification into, especially in mobility ecosystem, right? It's kind of, I don't want to call it an evil, but somehow it is a necessary evil for us. Like, I mean, we would love to take that step away from us so that people can get converted, but then it's such a necessary step in our onboarding system. So, improving on the experience on that is super critical for us. I mean, it's not just our product element as well, right? So other product teams from Jumio need to get involved in it. So that's kind of shared. So it's in best interest of everyone along, but different industries to really develop that, especially if we go into the future, the world getting more digital IDs coming into picture. So that's something which is here to stay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nitin. Sebastian?
Thank you. Maybe final statement, maybe from this creation process is something that if you create something new, it's always great to embrace the critical aspects that are important in order to run something, and really don't try to duck away, kind of, because it will always get you when you have to launch something. You have to, as we heard before, you have to keep some regulations. You have to have identification things, and if so to embrace these aspects, and it's also about, I think, from my old days from hardware development, it's the same. You know, a motor has to fit in a box, and if it's not fit in the box, you have to make the box bigger. And I think this is crucial, to take all aspects of a service and product development quite serious. Yeah.
Great, yeah. Thank you. If there are not any questions, then we can give you a couple of minutes back. And thank you, Nitin, for joining. Thank you, Sebastian. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for your attention.
Thank you.
Rest of the day.
Thank you so much to all of you for that interesting discussion. Excellent. So now, folks, we're going to take a short break, and we're back here in it's about 4:30. So yeah, coffee pause, everyone. Thank you.